So I was working on some other content and I realized that I have not recorded my vision for this year. Um so what that means, each year I work on the vision, things that I need clarity on, things that I need to work on that I'm working towards, and I write them all out and it's broken down by there's a vision, there are rules and principles of my life, and then also um affirmations. So it's kind of long, 4 or 5 pages. So I typically will record that so I can go back and listen to it every day because I may not have the time to actually like sit and read it. So when it's recorded, I make sure that I can hear it and I'm still getting that in, right? So if you don't know who I am, you're probably like, why do I care about what you're doing? My name is Timlin Bowens, and I'm America's favorite EA. So, as an enrolled agent, I am licensed through the Internal Revenue Service to represent taxpayers in all 50 states. And if you're not familiar with what tax representation is, I stand in the gap for taxpayers when they're having tax issues with the IRS. So, for example, if a taxpayer is being audited, if they're being levied, if they have a bill that they can't afford to pay in full right now, they hire me to represent them before the IRS and to make sure that their rights are not trampled over, essentially. But I got on today to check in with my fellow EAs, fellow tax professionals. Oops, off my desk. Because we only have 5 weeks left in tax season. So, not 5 weeks to the day, but pretty close until the April 15th deadline. And if you don't have everything done by then, it's okay. As an individual, you can still file a tax extension. So this isn't going to give you an extension of time to pay your taxes, but it will give you an extension of time to actually get your taxes filed, right? Now, the reason that's important, especially for my people that may have a balance, sometimes people will see their tax return and they can't pay it in full. So what they end up doing is they kind of like set it to the side on the desk, right? When that happens, you end up having failure to file penalties of 5% of the balance up to 5 months. So, what does that look like? That means if someone on here right now has a potential $10,000 tax bill, right? And it just, kind of makes you sweat a little bit, makes you nervous because you're like, I don't have 10 grand to pay right now. Maybe you unfortunately are one of the people who were just laid off. Um, Maybe your financial situation just won't allow it. It doesn't really matter what the reason is, but maybe your financial situation won't allow it. In that event, you have a couple of options. Like I said, you can file a tax extension that will give you from April 15th until October 15th to actually get the tax return filed. In those additional 6 months, you only have an extension of time to file, not to pay. However, by filing the extension, you are avoiding that 25% failure to file penalty. So not only would you have the $10,000 that you have to pay, you also would be looking at an additional 2,500, making it 12,500. Know what I'm saying? So don't panic if you are looking and you're like, I have a balance, I don't know what to do. File on time. File the extension on time because you are actually going to be helping yourself by doing that. So people are like hopping on and hopping off. I see the number going up, I see it going down. So if you're on here right now, just say, hey, what's up? So I know who's on here and let me know where you're tuning in from. Hi, your hair looks impeccable. Thank you for being consistent with knowledge sharing with others. Thank you so much for sharing with others. And I appreciate it. Look, I do what I can when I can, right? Um, so we got, I think it was Brianna, Haley. Thank you for the love on the hair. Also, thank you so much for sharing. Are you a tax professional or a taxpayer? Just interested in knowing because in April, I'm actually going to have some more content coming out that is specific for tax professionals. However, some of you all may not know if you're new here, I do have a podcast, the Tax Relief with Timberland Bowens podcast. You can stream that, it's audio only wherever you stream podcasts, but some people are subscribed to the YouTube channel because they listen to the podcast. So that is back on an every other Friday schedule. So the last episode that came out, I was talking about severance pay and whether or not that's taxable. And then I also did an episode that is coming out this Friday about unemployment tax. So Arthur Morgan says, sup, Arthur. Thanks for tuning in. Gloria says, hello, I'm Dominican. Rebecca says, English or Spanish. No hable español. Yeah, I can't even think about what a little bit says. No hable español. Unfortunately, like if I need to read it to be able to find like where I need to get going if I'm in another country, I can read it, the very basics. But for me to be able to communicate, my Spanish isn't that great. So I think it is Devra. Hello, hello. And I should have said this too, because on this channel, my main thing, and if you're you're a regular here, you know, is to fill the tax literacy gap. So one of the main things that I like to focus on is making sure that I have tax education that's palatable, right? So that means something that you guys can understand that doesn't feel like it's over your heads. And one of the ways that I do that, again, this channel right here, I have information on how to fill out W-4s, I have information on different tax forms. And what happened was I kept being asked certain questions over and over and over again. So I said, let me provide a resource for those people so they don't end up in trouble with the IRS, right? The next way I do it, like I mentioned with the podcast, yes, there are people who, there are some things you can show people better than you can tell them. However, with the podcast, that lets me reach more people. And like I said, you can also check that out here on the channel, on this YouTube channel, is the Tax Relief with Timberland Bowens podcast. Those were questions that people kept having about having tax issues with the IRS, such as what do you do if you can't make the tax deadline? How do you set up an installment agreement? Those types of things. That's the type of material that you'll find on the podcast. And then last but not least, I also have information for my fellow tax professionals because I went and I got a 4-year degree, undergrad at Bellarmine University in Louisville, Kentucky. Woo woo. That was 12 years ago. And I started my firm shortly after, had 3 years in public accounting, but there wasn't a lot of information out at that time about being an enrolled agent, even though the designation like dates back to Civil War, right? There wasn't, and there still isn't a lot of information about starting an enrolled agent firm. So one of the things that I've made it my duty to do on this channel is to share with other tax professionals and aspiring tax professionals about how to start an enrolled agent firm. So if it's not Deborah, I'm so sorry. Give me phonetically how to spell it. Deborah says, we're from India. Thanks for tuning in from India. What time is it right now in India? So I am in Louisville, Kentucky, Gloria. Yeah, good old Kentucky. And right now it is 4:48 p.m. Eastern. One moment. I have a family member. Okay. I have a family Zoom call in like 10 minutes. I had a family member reaching out about that. But yeah, today I'm hopping on, like I said, to check in with my tax professionals and then also taxpayers too, because there are things that I want to help you guys avoid. Like I said, the failure to file penalty, that is one that can completely disrupt your life. Like in the example I used before, having a $10,000 tax balance for a lot of people is scary, right? It's one of those things that causes people anxiety, and they kind of push the tax return to the side and they don't do anything about it because they can't pay it in full. Well, again, your best option is going to be to go ahead and file that tax return, because for every month that you wait to file it, so for every month that is late, maxed out at 5 months, you're going to pay 5%. So again, if there's a balance of 10,000 on there, it's going to end up being $12,500. Now, for me, I typically work with people who owe $100,000 or more. So let's do that same math. If you have an unexpected bill this spring and it's $100,000, if you don't file it in April, you don't file it in May, June, July, August, and you file it in September, and that's without filing an extension, that person, you, if you're watching and that the shoe fits, are going to owe an additional $25,000. So again, your best bet, even if you can't pay it in full, even if you can't put a penny towards it right now, is still to make sure you get it followed on time. So cool. So it's nighttime over in India. I can't remember. I did work with somebody over there at one time, and I think we were like on an 8 hour time difference. Hello, Jolly Tea Drinker. The Jolly Tea Drinker says, hello there. Yes, I still need to do my taxes. Well, we got 5 weeks. Now, in my firm in Louisville, Bowen's Tax Solutions, I am off the month of April. So all of my people will be done by the 28th. And when I say done, that means we'll either have their actual tax return filed or we'll have an extension filed on their behalf. And with the extension, we go ahead and have an estimate of whether or not they're going to owe or whether or not they need to pay. Because again, remember, the extension is only an extension of time to file, it's not an extension of time to pay. Now, there are going to be certain areas of the country they're going to have an automatic extension this year. Those areas are the ones that have been affected by a natural disaster. So, for example, here in Louisville, Kentucky, we had some extreme flooding last month. Um, I was actually in Tennessee when it was happening, but there are different parts of Kentucky where there were landslides due to the flooding. If you're subscribed to my channel, you would see, what would that be? Almost a month ago now, I posted a picture outside of my office and I'm downtown by the river. The water had come up, almost completely covered River Road, ironic name, right? And come up to where my office was at. So I took a picture of a sign that said, I think it said danger, high water. And people were reaching out to be like, hey, are you okay? Are you okay? And I didn't know why, but I didn't realize how much flooding we had in the city. So my office is downtown, but I don't live anywhere near downtown. So I'm about 20-ish minutes away. So I was out of touch with what was happening downtown and in the different rural areas. Another area, two other areas that we're going to see this happen with as well is going to be California, where the fires were earlier this year, and then also North Carolina. So I don't remember top of mind for those states, excuse me, but the IRS has put out for the state of Kentucky for those affected by the natural disaster. We actually have an automatic extension until November to get taxes filed and paid. So Sue asked the question, can I claim my Medicare premiums as part of my public safety officer insurance credit? So Sue, that is one of those things. What state are you in? So going back to like when I explained I'm an enrolled agent, I'm licensed through the Internal Revenue Service. So I can help taxpayers all over the world as long as they are filing US taxes. However, okay, Colorado, it's a federal designation, so I can help people all over. with that specific thing, I'm actually not sure. I think I have 3 clients in Colorado, and none of those 3 um, are public safety officers. For your 8962, well, I will tell you this. If it's on the 8962, that's not one that I am familiar with. Let me see something really quick. And I'm going to go ahead and open Zoom up because I told you guys I have a family Zoom meeting in like 5 minutes. Let's see. One moment, sorry. People are trying to come in this room and I start typing over there. Yeah, so Sue, I don't know if you're new here or not. I am going to stay in my lane, of course, always of taxes, but that's something that I'm actually not familiar with, so I don't even want to try to give you any advice. Now, with it, I can tell you like the publication that you could look in for that. But you know what I'll do? Let me look at something to see how many other people are looking up stuff like that because, of course, I do still want to help you, but if it would be beneficial to other people as well, I might create a video on it after I've done my research and due diligence so that I can actually give you an educated answer about it. Yeah, but again, honestly, today I don't know because I'm not familiar with that. Yeah, no problem. You're welcome. I'm a taxpayer. However, we all need information. I know many youth who also are looking for next steps in personal and professional development. Yeah, it's crazy to me. So I got off of the app formerly known as Twitter, right? Just because it was getting crazy. So I've been on Threads and using that more. And if you're not familiar, Threads is just simply like Meta, which is Instagram and Facebook. It's their version of Twitter, right? So I've been on there, and some of the very basic tax terminology, it's interesting to me, the people who just don't know the correct terminology. Now, shameless plug, there is a video on here that talks about like 15 tax terms that everyone should know. But what kind of had me tripped up and was like leading to this was people not knowing the difference between income tax, sales tax, and then income, sales tax, property tax. So maybe you're like them. Income tax is going to be based solely on how much income that you've made over the year. This could be earned income, unearned income, anything that's taxable that came through your bank account. Okay, so any income that you got. That's what income tax is based on. Now we have your sales tax that's going to be based on your consumption. So, for example, here in Kentucky, we have a 6% sales tax. So, if I go to the store and purchase items, I'm going to pay 6% on that. Here in Kentucky, if I go to the gym, if I go to a sporting event or a concert, I'm going to pay 6% of that. Because again, that sales tax is based on my consumption, things that I've bought. Then we have the property tax. So, for those of you who own homes, I own a home. Each year, there's a property value assessment, and I pay property tax based on that for the home. For my vehicle, think about it when you renew the tax of your car. Part of that is a tax. So, those 3 different taxes and the definitions had people in a chokehold, but not in the correct way. And then we're usually familiar with the common ones like tax return and tax refund. Your refund is what you get back if you've overpaid, right? Sorry, people are starting to come onto my meeting. And the tax return for individuals is going to be the 1040 that you actually file to report to the IRS what your income was for the year. So going through that and then talking about common penalties, because there were people on there that were upset because the IRS had assessed them with a 25% penalty and they were calling it different things. And I was like, oh, that's actually a failure to file penalty. If you log in and you see that your previous 3 years you filed on time, you may actually be able to ask for that penalty to be removed on the phone. It's called first time penalty abatement. So I say all that, I think, Brianna, because I am a self proclaimed tax nerd, but it's always interesting for me to see how many people just don't know, and they don't know what they don't know, right? So if there's anything that you good people are interested in learning about our tax system, if there's not a video on here about it, depending on the demand for it, I'm definitely willing to cover that either in a video or podcast episode on the Tax Relief with Timlin Bowens podcast. Because for me, again, it's all about filling the tax literacy gap. Like, I've taken that on as a personal mission because taxes aren't everybody's thing. Everybody's not going to get and grasp it, right? So I do pride myself in being able to take complex tax situations and making sure that people understand them and how it's going to affect them, right? So it's 5 o'clock Eastern here. I appreciate you all that did hop on with me. I hope that you all enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Have a wonderful afternoon. And I may hop on a little bit later. But if you have not already, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern, I am dropping an announcement, and then you'll be seeing me much more often over here on the YouTube channel again because I have some really exciting things coming down the pipeline to help again with preventative care for taxpayers to make sure that taxpayers just like you don't have any tax issues. So you guys enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I'll talk to you or I'll see you tomorrow at noon when the announcement drops.